Hello friends, welcome to part 3 of learning Java. In this video, we will learn about data types and variables. We are ready to write our first Java program. Just like we write essays using some kind of word editor, we need a text editor to write our codes. In computer science, data is information that is stored or processed by a computer. While that may seem fairly abstract, there are many data points we use in everyday life. Your name, your age, the number of oranges in your house, whether the lights is on or off. These can be considered pieces of data, and we represent pieces of data in code using data types. Similar to other programming languages, Java classifies different pieces of data with different data types based on their values. For example, there's a data type for letters and symbols, and there are various data types for numbers. Ultimately, a data type provides a set of possible values, and if a piece of data is one of these values, it is classified as that specific type. Java separates its data types into two main categories that are then broken down further into more distinct data types. One of the categories is called primitive data types, which consists of the most basic data types in Java language. The most important primitive data type is Boolean, int, double, and char. There are other primitive data types that exist in Java, but these are the most foundational. The second category is called the reference types. We'll talk about reference types in later session. Diving deeper into these primitive types, the Boolean data type represents a true or false value. This means the data piece of whether the hall light is on or off could be represented as Boolean in code. It might have a value of true or it may have a value of false, but it can never have both. It must either be true or false. In int, short for integer, represents a whole number. The number of siblings you have could be represented in code using an int. You could have 0 siblings, 3 siblings, 10 siblings, any whole number amount of siblings. A double represents a decimal number. With a double, you can represent your percentage you got in 10th class, say 93.4 in Java. The last primitive type we'll talk about is char, which is short for character. A char represents a single letter or a symbol. Some possible values of char could be your first initial or last initial, your favorite letter, or the hashtag symbol. We classify these data types, Boolean, int, double, char, as primitive types because they are basis of foundation of all the other data types within the Java programming language. Let's try using our primitive data types in Java. Let's create some data types in Java. In this lesson, we'll be creating a few pieces of data that could represent attributes of a given high school student. Our program will have representations of student age, marks, first initial, last initial, as well as if the student has perfect attendance so far this year. Before we get to the code, let's assign a Java data type to each of these pieces of data. As we mentioned in the last slide, an age could be represented in Java with either an int or a double, depending on exactly how we want it to be. In this case, we'll be using an int to represent the age. Potential values for a student marks could be 80.5, 91.5, or 67.5. These are all decimal values, so the data type for a student marks would be a double. The first initial and the last initial are each a single character, so both of these would be represented by the data type char. A student can either have perfect attendance or not have perfect attendance. There is no in between. So it has to be a Boolean data type. Let's try creating some Java code that represents these pieces of data. So now we're going to practice on how to represent data with data types. The first thing we wanted to specify was the age of the student. So suppose the age is 15. If we write 15 here and press enter and continue on with the percentage or the marks that the student got, say 90.5. This will create many errors. Why? Because we have not specified these datas into variables and data types. So this will be incorrect.
First, we need to write a variable, assigning the number 15 a variable. Say the variable is student age is equal to 15 and end it with a semicolon. But this too will create errors because we did not specify the data type. So in front of student age, we should write int, representing integer, as we discussed earlier. Next, we wanted to represent the student marks. So for that, as we discussed earlier, we were going to use double. Then assigning a variable name saying student marks is equal to, say, 90.5, ending with a semicolon. Congratulations, you've just created two variables in Java. The next thing we wanted to represent, the next data we wanted to represent was by the first initial. For first initial, we were going to use char and then assigning it a variable name, student first initial, equal to, say, s. Then we put a semicolon and move to the next line. The next thing we wanted to represent was our last initial. So we will again use char and then we will use student last initial, giving the initial another value, say s, then ending with semicolon. Here, the equal to sign is an operator that specifies the variable with the data. The next thing we wanted to represent was if the student has perfect attendance or not. For that, we were going to use Boolean, assigning it a variable name, has perfect attendance, and then assigning it a value, say true. Now, as you can see over here, all of these variables are grayed out. That is because we have not specified them anywhere in our Java program. To specify them anywhere, we can try and print these statements. So to print them, we will have to type in system.out.println, and then in the brackets, in your parenthesis, you can write simply student age without any double quotes. Now, as you can see here, student age is kind of highlighted. So now let's go ahead and print out everything from student age to student marks to student first initial, last initial, and has perfect attendance. So now we just simply put a semicolon here and then continue on. System.out.println, and in the parenthesis we write student marks. Then with the semicolon again we write system.out.println, and in parenthesis we now write student first initial, then ending with semicolon. You can keep on going with this until you complete all of your variable names. Now that I am done with assigning all the variable names, you can see here that all these variables are now highlighted. If I am going to run this, then let's see the output. To run this, I can either press this button over here, or I can right click the project name, and it will still give me the run. So let's go ahead and run this program. As you can see, this is our output. First, it is 15, which is our student age, then 90.5, which is student marks, then first initial and last initial, and finally true. This was how to represent data using data types.
In this video, we learned what data types are and the different types of primitive data types. We also learned how to represent data using data types. In the next video, we will be looking into strings. So stay tuned and do like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.